Today's workshop or webinar is in support of the upcoming January 18th One Dream, One Minnesota Career Fair that will be held at the National Guard Armory. And we're going to be talking about kind of how to prepare for that, how to make the most of that opportunity. There's going to be a lot of jobs available and marketed by employers. And it's important that when you come to a job fair, you understand, what they're expecting and what you can do to show that you're interested, and then maybe research some of the positions. So we'll give you some resources on how to do that. So our agenda today is we're going to be talking about the job fair, kind of even how to get there, and how to prepare for it. We'll talk about searching for jobs that you might find at the job fair or just in general. We're going to also be talking about resume writing, both in preparation for the job fair, but also some resources. At the end of today's presentation, I'm going to talk about how you can get help with your resume, how you can set up a one-to-one with a career force representative to further enhance your resume and make it specific to jobs that you might be interested in. We'll also talk about how to speak to recruiters, how to make an impression, a good first impression. And like I said, Career Force services available to each and every Minnesota job seeker that is needing maybe just a little bit of help. And then we'll finish it up with the questions that I curate from the chat. So any questions that you have, please put them in the chat feature, and myself, as well as the other presenters, will get to those at the end of the presentation. So the goal of today's webinar is just to provide you information to make it a successful event. If you're going to take the time to drive and park and walk into the National Guard Armory on Saturday, we want to make sure that you're getting the most out of that experience. So along those lines, I have a couple of people here today that are going to help with that. And so we have two presenters, and we have Miley Silber from Minnesota Management and Budget, and we have Xiaoji Zhang from Minnesota Management and Budget. And I'm going to turn it over to Xiaoji to walk us through the first part of our presentation.
Perfect. Thank you, Art. Can you all hear me okay? Perfect. Hi, just as Art just introduced, my name is Xiaoji. I will talk a little bit about what to expect at the fair this Saturday. So as you can see here on the slides, the fair will be this Saturday from 10 a.m. to 2 p.m. It will be held at the St. Paul National Guard Armory on 600 Cedar Street. It's located just north of the East 12th Street. There's another venue. If you search on Google Map, it's also called Armory. Just want making sure that you have the correct address for Saturday. This photo right here on the slide is showing the main entrance on Cedar Street, just for a visual reference. One thing to know we want everyone to do right away is we strongly recommend you to pre-register for this event. This will speed up your check-in on the day. You can find the registration link on our event page. On Art and Miley, if one of you could also put the link in the chat right now, so you can open the link and complete your registration after this webinar. And we can go to the next slide, please. Perfect, thank you. So if you do need to use an accessible entrance, that entrance is located on the north side of the Armory building on Columbus Avenue. So you can see here, we have a map view of the entrance and also a street view that's highlighted is where the red arrow is pointing to. Because of the Armory building security requirement, so this door is locked. So if you need to access this entrance, we recommend you to call these two numbers we listed over here before your arrival. So we'll have a staff on site and waiting for you at the entrance. You can call either of these two numbers, so 651-259-3604 or 651-201-8034. We will send out these slides afterwards, so you don't necessarily have to take them down right now, but I do recommend saving them in your phone if you do anticipate to use the accessible entrance on the day. Next slide. Thank you. So here is a map that's showing the location of the National Guard Armory building located on Cedar Street. That's where the navy blue arrow is pointing to. One thing to note is that there will be another large event called the People's March on the same day on January 18th at the Capitol Mall. We are expecting some road closures in that area, specifically the John Ireland Boulevard from East 12th Street to MLK Boulevard, and MLK Boulevard from Cedar Street to University Avenue will be closed. So these road closure area is highlighted by red on this map. The Cedar Street, which is the street right in front of the main entrance to the Armory, will be open. Because of the anticipated road closure, we do recommend, if possible, attendees utilizing public transportation to come to the fair. There are 2 Green Line stations close to the fair site. The closer one is the 10th Street station. If you're looking at this map view, it's highlighted by the lower green box on the map. Another stop is the Robert Street location that is pointed out by the green box towards the top of the map. If you do plan to drive to the fair this Saturday, we do have some free parking location that's specifically reserved for the for the fair. One is called Lot K. The entrance is located on East 12th Street. This is outdoor parking lot located right across the street from the St. Paul Armory. Another reserved parking spot is the Centennial parking ramp. The entrance to this to the green level is located on Columbus and Minnesota Street. So this particular entrance does not show up on Google Map search. You can use this address listed on the slide as destination when you're setting up for GPS navigation. The top level of this ramp, which is also called the orange level, is also reserved for both career fair attendees and the People's March organizers. So folks can also use the top level. That entrance is located on MLK Junior Boulevard. Outside of the reserved parking spots we just talked about, there are other free parking available for general public on the day of the fair. So this including the Anderson ramp, parking lots U, W, and J. I know this map is a little hard to read. So in the attached link, when you get the slides, when we send this out after the event, you can click on this for specific instructions for these locations. One thing to note is that there are meter parking on Cedar Street, but those will be enforced by St. Paul Police Department, and payment is required on Saturday. Next slide. So here's a list of the agencies that will be present at the fair. So you can see that we have quite a range of agency represented, and I know our state recruiter will be excited to meet you and discuss, potential opportunities at the state. If we move to the next slide. So overall, we have over 30 agencies that will be attending the career fair on Saturday. So besides speaking with agency recruiters at the fair, you can also speak with state representatives to ask about the state employee benefits. You can also have your resume reviewed by a state HR professional. So if that's something you're interested, definitely print out your resume and bring it with you on Saturday. In addition, we also have State Employee Resources Group representative available on that day, and you can also speak with Career Force and Veteran Services representative to learn a little bit about their resources to support job seekers. Next slides. A couple things to consider for the day of the fair in terms of what to wear. We recommend just dress what you think best represent yourself, and as well as taking weather into consideration. As I just mentioned, bring printed copy of your resume if you want to have your resume reviewed. There are no printing on site. And a couple other things that could be helpful: bring a notepad and pen for you to take notes, write down the name of a recruiter you spoke with if you want to follow up afterwards. And if you do have looked up positions that's open right now, you're interested, I would say prepare a couple questions that you can ask specific agency recruiters so that you can have a better understanding of the requirement or the job itself. I will now turn over to my colleague Miley to share a little bit about information related to employment at the state and how do you look for a position in our online system. Miley.
Thanks, Xiaoji. Hi, everyone. My name is Miley Silber. As mentioned before, I'm the enterprise recruitment consultant here at the state with MMB. So looking forward to sharing with you a little bit more about working at the state of Minnesota. Just to give you a little bit of background information prior to coming to the fair on Saturday, if you plan to. So Art, we can move to the next slide. So a couple fun facts. The state of Minnesota is actually the third, we kind of bounce between like third, second, and first largest employer in the state of Minnesota. We have over 50,000 employees across 100 state agencies, boards, commissions, and colleges and universities as well. And so we have such a wide variety of career opportunities, and we'll be able to share what those may look like and how you can find the best opportunity for yourself here at the state. The wonderful thing about working at the state of Minnesota is that we have opportunities not just here locally in the St. Paul, Minneapolis metro, but we are in greater Minnesota. And we have full-time, part-time, seasonal, and temporary positions, depending on what your needs are right now for your career. We do have a variety of those offerings as well. We can move to the next slide, Art. So here is just a quick summary of kind of what you can find here at the state. This is not an all encapsulating list, but we jokingly say from accounting to zoology, literally, because the Minnesota Zoo does fall under state employment. So as you think about where your strengths may lie, where you feel like your career path is headed, it's a good way to think about opportunities kind of bulked into some of these groups, including administrative support, legal, tourism, public safety, and I'll be able to share some tips and tricks on job searching on our career site coming up next. So next slide, please. Wonderful things about working at the state. So other than, a paycheck, what does the state offer? The state does have offer leave time. So that's vacation, sick time, your paid holidays. In addition to accruing vacation and sick time, we have 13 paid holidays, one of which is a flex holiday that you're able to use. We also offer very comprehensive health, dental, and life insurance plans. We also have a retirement plan. You might hear about the pension here at the state, which you are fully vested in after 3 years. We offer an employee assistance program, which is kind of a service that is offered outside of just your general health, dental, and life insurance. I've heard stories of people using the EAP to help plan their wedding or for, therapy or mental health services. I think someone even used it to help plan a vacation. And so they do offer just a variety of service kind of outside of your normal benefits. And you can see the list of other opportunities and benefits of working here at the state as well. We can move on to the next slide. All right, so navigating the Minnesota career site, I always like to give tips on this so that you have the best experience when job searching because we do have so many opportunities. We can have at any given time 400 to 500 plus open jobs. And so we'll be sharing with you just how to navigate and then also how to save some searches. And if you're interested, you can even apply to a couple of roles before you come to the career fair on Saturday. So we can go to the next slide. So when you enter the Minnesota career site and you click on, search for jobs or search for careers, I always recommend first viewing all jobs instead of, typing in accountant or typing in administrative assistant. Highly, highly recommend going to view all and then using the filters on the left side of the page to then narrow down your search based on location or if there's an agency that you really want to work for. You'll also see the term job family, and that's kind of the type of role or career that you're interested in right now. And so that's my number one tip is to look at that job family. We'll go a little bit more in depth right after this, but you can also search by full-time status, part-time status, if you're wanting a temporary position, or if you're needing a role that may be telework, which is what we call our hybrid or our remote work here at the state. So you can use all of those filters to kind of find the right opportunity for you. We can go to the next slide. So here's the tips on filtering by job family. So this gives an example of what those job families may be, and then also the job function. So you can see here that if you want to work in human services, they have a filter for that. Or if you're currently going to school and you want a student worker role or an internship, you can filter by that. And then also where I find it really helpful is the job function. So as you think about what you want to do, or you think about where your career has been, this is the best way to find all the opportunities at all the state agencies that may fall under that umbrella. So for example, if you're very interested in our healthcare opportunities, you see that there's a check box there for nursing. If you're an RN, LPN, you can find all of those openings just by clicking on that box. And then you can also save your searches. So if we go to the next slide, this button allows you to save this search so that the next time when you come to the Minnesota Careers site, you're able to just revisit that search over and over again. And you can actually create an email alert so that when there's new jobs that fall within this criteria, you'll get a notification and you can go and review that open posting to ensure that it does align well with your career path. We can go to the next slide. So when reviewing a job posting, there's a lot of content and a lot of information on our job postings. Couple key things that I like to point out to everyone is what is listed here. I do want to highlight and talk through closing date. Every position will have an open and closing date. So when a position is opened, you can apply for it, but most of our roles here at the state are open for 21 days, and resumes are not reviewed until after a position is closed. So for example, if a position opened today on the 14th and you applied, but it doesn't close until February 4th, you will most likely not hear back until the 4th. So I do tell people don't fret, and you have up until that closing date to apply. At 11:59 p.m. on that date is when that position will close. The job posting will also note the hiring agency. Our salary ranges are always posted as well, and they will give a broad range on where you will fall within that salary. It also will share if you are going to be part of a bargaining unit or a union. And then it'll also note if you are telework eligible. And then most importantly, on the positions and postings, they'll note minimum qualifications and preferred qualifications. So we'll dive deep into that and how important that information will be for you as an applicant when it comes to writing your resume. Minimum qualifications are the must-haves for an applicant to be considered for that role. The preferred qualifications are more of the nice to have. If you don't have those, that's okay. But the minimum qualifications are the things you really want to look at and make sure that you address on your resume before applying to the position. And finally, there is a recruiter contact on postings. So if you have questions on, your applicant status, or if you wanted to reach out and just say introduce yourself, there is a point of contact with their email kind of towards the bottom of the posting. You can always reach out to that individual. We can go to the next slide. And then resume tips and tricks. Some rules and some really good guidance that I give people is that just ensuring that you do write out how you meet the minimum qualifications on your resume. If you're applying to the private sector, so not public sector roles, you're kind of given the rule of, hey, try to keep your resume to 1 to 2 or 1 to 2 pages. Very standard. When I recruited in the private sector, that's what I told everyone. We wanted to see summaries. We wanted to see key highlights. At the state, it's kind of the opposite. We don't have a page restriction or a page limit to what your resume needs to be. If it takes 3, 4, 5, 6 pages for you to get across all of your qualifications and show all of your years of experience, that is totally okay. The state is merit-based, and so we want to ensure that you are merited on all of your qualified experience. And that means ensuring that you put month and year to month and year for your dates of employment, or you can even get as granular as month and day if you know that. Really highlighting all of your relevant work experience and adding bullet points that address those minimum qualifications. Here at the state right now, we do not use AI to screen out applicants. So you don't have to worry about making sure you have the right terminology in there. We just recommend that as you look at those minimum qualifications, it is exemplified on your resume if you have that minimum qualification. We do recommend adding some skills and accomplishments that you've achieved throughout your career. Volunteer experience or organizational memberships are a definite plus. And then education experience is very valuable as well. Just addressing Deborah's question, great timing. I would say 97, 98% of our roles here at the state no longer require a bachelor's degree. So if you do, the posting will state, bachelor's degree may account for 6 months of experience or a year. It kind of depends on the posting itself, but it will outline if your education will count towards years of experience, and making sure that you do account that when you're considering your objective or your summary or even your cover letter. Some roles will still require a degree. For example, like our legal counsels, those are going to require, the JD or the judicial doctorate. So making sure that you do review all of those minimum qualifications. But yes, it is true. For most of our roles, we don't require a bachelor's degree anymore. And then I always recommend putting licenses and certificates as well, especially for getting into some of our more technical roles, being able to show what your accomplishments are and your certifications. One thing that is not listed on there that I usually give to individuals who are in the communications world or marketing is if you have any publications that you would like to share. You can even put those links on your resume just to kind of show what you've publicized and give examples of work in the past. Formatting tips too, substance over aesthetics. A beautiful resume is a beautiful resume, but we really want the content to be meaningful. So adding details, adding metrics. So if you are a manager of 10 individuals on a team, highlighting that you oversaw and managed 10 staff. And then if there were very particular projects that you worked on, giving some detail around those projects. If you are experienced or an expert in certain systems or programs, making sure that you do list those out as well. And then, as always, proofread for content, grammar, and any typos along the way. It doesn't count you out if we see those, but again, just ensuring that you're presenting your best self on paper. We can go to the next slide. Little side note here for people with disabilities. We do have a program here at the state called Connect 700. This is a formal program, but Connect 700 is an on-the-job training program that is an alternate procedure for candidates who have disabilities that may make it difficult for them to demonstrate, through the standard interview or hiring and selection process. So this program does provide opportunity to assess the abilities of a qualified individual to perform the job for 700 hours with or without accommodations. And then by observing that individual during their on-the-job work experience, they can then be offered and move into that full-time role. So a little bit different of an avenue for people with disabilities. And if you think that you might fall into this population, who is eligible, you do have to meet minimum qualifications of a job. And then because it is a formal program, there's an application process and documentation that has to be provided to meet the requirements to be part of the Connect 700 program. So if you are interested, we do have an individual that runs this program here at the state. You can reach out to eligibility.mmb@state.mn.us to inquire a little bit more about this process and how you can get involved. We can go to the next slide. All right, navigating the career fair. Some tips that I share with you here today can be applied to this upcoming career fair, but you can also apply to any future career fair as well. So I think I saw a chat in there that someone may not be able to attend. Totally okay. Just some good tips as you're, meeting with employers in the future. We can go to the next slide. Wonderful. So at the fair, who do I talk to? On this Saturday, we will have many state agencies and boards and commissions there. So just so you all know, Saturday will be heavily focused on state opportunities versus, other companies or private sector. So you will be able to meet with hiring leaders. You'll be able to meet with HR, with recruiters from different state agencies for many of the job families and functions that we do have open right now on our career site. I always recommend be open to who you talk to. You may talk to a recruiter who can give you advice on applying or resume writing. Then you may talk to a manager and get some insight on how to interview with different leaders. And then you may want to go learn about someone's career path. So there's a lot of things that you can take away. At this career fair, we will have a job seeker table, which actually will be sponsored by Career Force to help answer any questions in that job seeking process. And we'll also have a veterans table, services table available too for anyone who may have served that may need additional guidance or support along the way. We can go to the next slide. All right, so when speaking with recruiters or even HR or another manager that you may meet, I always recommend introduce yourself. Even though I'm here talking on today's call, I probably would lean towards more of an introvert versus an extrovert. I don't love introducing myself to strangers and people I don't know, but it does take a little bit of courage and a couple deep breaths to say, all right, we've got to talk to 5 new people today. So if you find yourself more on the introverted side, maybe give yourself a goal. Maybe think about, which agencies you really, really want to talk to and say, hey, I have to talk to this table before I leave today. Or again, if you're kind of just seeking and not really sure where you want to land, introduce yourself to 5 new people just to get yourself comfortable. You'll be surprised by how easy it'll be and then how comfortable and how quickly you can adapt and then keep rolling in your introduction. So always give your name and then share a little bit about what you're interested in. So, just as simple as, hi, my name's Miley and I have 3 years of project management experience. And I'm really interested in opportunities within diversity, equity, and inclusion. Could you tell me more about opportunities that might be a good fit at your agency? Something that's simple, that easy, that can help open up a conversation. Recruiters and anyone at the career fair is going to be there to talk to you. They're excited to meet you. So being able to give a little bit more insight into what you're needing will help them navigate that conversation with you. I always recommend asking questions. So if you need clarification on something that they said, or if you just have questions in general about their career path or their agency, definitely feel free to do so. And then you can ask about upcoming postings or what they currently have posted too, and ask for any recommendations. And again, a little bit of guidance along the way. And then before you leave that conversation, ask for a contact, ask for a way to, follow up. We had a question about bringing a resume. If you have a paper resume with you, share it with the recruiter. They may or may not take a copy just because here at the state, you still have to apply through our system to be reviewed. So just handing your resume to a recruiter does not mean you're applying. And so that's where we always recommend make sure you do apply at our job site. But if you would like to give your resume, I always think that's really helpful for name recognition, or if you want to stay in touch with someone, that's just a nice way to remind them of who you are as well. And we can go to the next slide. And so what does the application and hiring and interview process look like here at the state? I alluded to it a little bit on the front end of our posting timeframe. So again, most postings are up for 21 days. You may not hear back within that 21 days. So again, don't fret if you don't hear anything. Once that position closes, that's when HR or the recruiter team will go in and review all of the applications and determine, hey, which ones do meet our minimum qualifications and those are routed then to the hiring manager. So that's kind of our selection phase. From there, hiring managers will then reach out to candidates to conduct, interviews. Standard practice here at the state is usually 2 to 3 rounds of interviews, depending on the level of the position. So if you're a director or an assistant commissioner or a very high or deputy director level role, those are going to require a couple more steps. Some may require some presentation, but for the most part, I would say an interview process here will take about 2 steps and includes a panel interview of 2 to 4 other leaders or individuals participating in that interview. And so interviews here at the state can be done over the phone. They can be done virtual like this, or in person too. Whoever will be interviewing will let you know. And then from there, they do make a final selection. You may get a verbal offer or a formal offer letter saying, hey, we'd love for you to join. And then we do background checks, references, and then we have you on board. So it is a standard hiring and interview process. The biggest caveat and change from what you may experience from outside of the state is just the timing can take a little bit longer. So I do tell people, don't fret if you don't hear back right away, and you can reach out to that HR or recruiter contact on that job postings. Answering Dave's question here, yes, rounds. So usually like the first round is a phone interview or a screening interview with a hiring leader, especially if there's multiple qualified candidates. Second round is a little bit more formal. It could be a virtual panel interview with the hiring leader and then maybe a couple other managers from different teams, or an in-person interview with a similar setup with panels with other leaders. And then again, depending on the level of the position, there may be a third round with a presentation or with like a case study, depending on the level of role and caliber of work that will be completed. So it is standard practice to kind of do at least 2 to 3 rounds. But that gives you just a really high overview of the state and our processes and kind of what to expect through the application and interview process. Let's see here. Does the state, for our application tracking system, we have a system, but it does not use AI right now to boot out like resumes. So in my past experience, like if you didn't have like Microsoft Office on your resume, for example, if the AI screening tool didn't see that on your resume, you would get kicked out right away. At the state, we don't have that. We are manually reviewing resumes right now. And so your resume will be reviewed by a person. And then let's see here. Sharing questions about 24 hours in advance. Depending on the agency that you go to, they may provide those questions ahead of time. The standard practice here at the state is that we use what's called behavioral based interviews. So understanding what you've done in your past. Those are the tell me about a time, walk me through, describe a time. Occasionally you'll get like a situational question of like, hey, what would you do in this situation? But every interviewee that goes through the process gets asked the same questions so that we can equitably measure and draw up, hey, who would be the best qualified candidate for the role. If you are part of like a case study or like a homework assignment or a presentation, that's normally given to you at least 24 hours in advance so that you can prepare for it. And that really just wraps up my part of the content here. If you have more questions, please throw them in the chat. I'll answer them, or we'll have time at the end too to answer additional questions, but I'll hand it back over to Art.
All right, thank you very much. So I'm going to talk a little bit about CareerForce. So I am the job service field director for the state, meaning that I cover the entire state and all the associated CareerForce locations in which my staff are there. And we have we have around 55 CareerForce locations, and that's all the way from Thief River Falls to Winona, from Faribault to Duluth. I used to be the manager in the Duluth Career Force location. So what we are is Minnesota's career development and talent matching resource. So this used to be called workforce centers, and I work for Job Service, but really what it is a collection of agencies and programs that kind of come together so you don't have to go all over town to, maybe meet with a veterans representative in one part of town and then have someone help you with interview prep in another, and then maybe look for dislocated worker funding in another. Nationally, these are called American Job Centers. Locally in Minnesota, we call them career force locations. So what we do is we guide people towards rewarding careers and connect them through opportunity. In many cases, we use the state's labor exchange, minnesotaworks.net, to do that. But we work with any employer that pays into unemployment tax has the ability to post their job on the state's labor exchange. They also get services from our employer navigators. So we talk to employers all the time. One of those employers just happens to be the state of Minnesota. And if you think about it, who better to get advice on how to interview for a state job than a state employee? I'm a state employee. I've been through, I think, 6 interview processes with the state. And one of the benefits of working for the state is it's a large organization. There's a lot of upward mobility. Many people start at an entry level like I did many years ago. And really, there's the opportunity to not have to reintroduce yourself to that next employer because there's opportunities within that employer. So it's a great, that's just a personal thing I'm going to put out there, that the state is an incredible organization to work for with a lot of variable opportunities. We did have someone who asked, are there opportunities in Rochester? There's opportunities throughout the state. And that link that we sent you of how to find the openings, you should do that before you go to the job fair. To see if you should go to the job fair. And I almost guarantee you're going to find a lot of opportunities locally. I happen to live in Twig, Minnesota. I don't know if anyone even knows where Twig, Minnesota is. And there's opportunities here. It's north of Duluth, by the way. So when people think of state, they often think of St. Paul. And yes, there's a lot of our organizations and some of the offices are in St. Paul, but there's also opportunities throughout the state. So we provide valuable workforce development connections and resources for employers, like I said, and we also help career seekers connect to those employers. As I mentioned, there are 55 locations across the state. And what we do is we help with a variety of services. We call them basic career services. These can include such things as workshops, of which you're in one right now. You've successfully registered for a workshop. We have multiple workshops per week. As far as the job service offerings, we call that Career Force from Anywhere. That's our virtual platform. That was created out of necessity when COVID kind of hit us all with created opportunities for growth and problem solving. So we created this virtual platform. The state of Minnesota is one of the first states to do this. Coming out of the pandemic, we realized that for many, this just works too well. I'll give you an example. When I was in Duluth, as manager in Duluth, we would have people that would come all the way down from Grand Marais. That's 110 miles, and they would come for a 1-hour workshop and then hopefully meet with the career force counselor while they were there. But imagine the difference between being able to do that and get some of that same information from the comfort of your home, like you're doing today. So we do have workshops in person, but we also have them virtually, and I'll be sending links on how to find your closest career force location in the follow-up material. You can also register for a one-on-one. If you have very specific questions, maybe you didn't want to ask a question today, but it's a very personal question that you don't feel comfortable with in this arena. Have a one-on-one. Register for a one-on-one conversation at your local career force location. That can be done over the phone. It can be done through setting up an online thing like a WebEx or a Teams meeting, and it can also be done in person. Services vary depending on where you are located, but there are services available throughout the state. So make sure you're taking advantage of that. We also help with interview assistance. If you have an interview coming up and maybe want to test out that technology, No one was able to test out their webcam today. And if you're going to go on a virtual interview, that's something you should try out. You should make sure that the technology works. This might be the first time you've interviewed online or in a through an online platform. So make sure that you're comfortable with that. We can give you some standard interview questions. I think Mei-Li had talked about behavioral-based interview questions. There's a whole process to that. We call it the STAR method. And in many of our workshops, we walk you through that. But if you have an interview coming up and just want to maybe try a few sample questions, you can give us the questions, or we can provide them, and we can do that again over the phone or online or in person. And then, as was mentioned, we'll have a table at the job fair. So if you would like to have your resume reviewed, please make sure to bring a copy. There are other methods of doing that. I mean, you could even email it to us. But at the fair, the best way is to bring a printed copy. I think it was mentioned that many of the programs or the organizations that will be at the career fair may not accept your resume. And people are sometimes frustrated by that. They say, well, why did I come here if you're not going to accept my resume? Well, the reason is we have an application process. We can't scan that resume into that. However, if you go to a job fair and someone asks to see your resume, you didn't bring one, that's a missed opportunity to connect with that person. So don't be offended if they can't take it, but always bring it, if, at the very least, to get a resume review through CareerForce professionals. Or if you are a veteran, please reach out to the veterans booth there. They have a great ability of taking militarized terms and putting them civilian wording. I interview all the time, and I interview veterans quite a bit. And one of the things that's very difficult is to take information in a certain industry, a very specific kind of employer-based jargon, like if you were a commander of a battalion. Well, what does that mean to a private sector or state employer? How can you put that into wording that they would understand? So please reach out. All right, at this point, we are going to turn it over to questions from the chat. I know my two co-presenters have done an excellent job throughout this of answering questions as they've come up, but I haven't had a chance to look through recently. So Mei-Li, or is there any questions that you have seen in there?
There was one question about salary. And so it's kind of a tricky question to answer because it kind of depends if you fall into a union or a bargaining unit. And so sometimes there's a little bit of wiggle room for negotiation, but do know that many of our roles fall into a union or a bargaining unit, which then has like a step within the salary range based on your years of experience. What I do like to tell people is that the cap at which you see that salary range is most likely the most that they can pay for that role. I would hate to see someone apply to a position thinking that they could negotiate, $10,000, $20,000 above that cap. That's just not very normal standard practice here at the state. And so I totally understand if you're coming from the private sector or even coming from, a different public sector arena that may have a little bit higher salary compensation. Salary sometimes is often the sticker shock. However, I like to tell people that the biggest trade-off really does come in the benefits piece, especially your out-of-pocket costs for health, your medical, your dental, and then even the pension plan. So if you ever have questions around total compensation as you're going through an interview process, or even once you get to the offer process, please reach out to your recruiter and HR team that you're working with to provide a full picture of what that'll look like, because it really does make a difference when you account for how much you're going to be paying for some of those benefits.
And that's one of the biggest things in applying for the state is seeing the full picture. The state is more competitive than they've ever been with wage, more competitive than when I started. It's just the reality of what all employers have to deal with. So if you have applied for the state in the past, it's kind of a new ball game. But what's always been there is really good benefits, and the compensation package is, I think, unmatched. But find out for yourself. Ask those questions. Do some research. Don't just look at the wage, because that doesn't tell the full story. Someone asked, how many resumes should we bring?
So we will have, I think the official count is 35 agencies. So if you would like to leave a resume for every single one of those agencies, at 35. Otherwise, if you want to be a little bit more selective, my rule is probably like 10 to 15. That way you can be a little bit more selective. We do have a resume room that Xiaoji had referenced earlier. So if you want assistance on or feedback on your resume, you can bring a hard copy to that, and someone can help give notes and feedback so you can take it along with you.
I always shoot for 10. I always bring 10 resumes, and sometimes I bring 10 back. But in some cases, I'm able to think of that as a goal. I'm going to at least connect with 10 employers. So that would be great. Oh, by the way, someone asked, how cold was it in Twig today? I think we had 16 below. So it was very chilly. I had a lot of outdoor work to do this morning, so I felt every degree of that. Let's see here. One thing to keep in mind, and this is from my Career Force hat, even though you're bringing 10 resumes, those are just your kind of meet and greet resumes. They're not specific to any job. Whenever you're applying for the state, it's incredibly important, or any employer, to make sure that you customize your resume to the needs of that employer. And if you're looking at like compensation and how much you are going to go up or down on that scale, a lot of it has to do with what you put on your resume. You have to make the case that you have the experience they are looking for. And one of the things that the state does, as Miley had mentioned, is we don't limit you to one page. You can tell the full story, and they look at the full story, and they will give you credit for the full story, but they won't give you credit for something you don't put on the resume. So make sure you're not taking something like a LinkedIn profile, and I've seen people do this, and use it as your application, because that's not talking about what the state needs. That's talking about what you tell people in general. Now, when you're going to any job fair, I've had people customize resumes for particular employers at job fairs. That's next level. That's way up there. That's not the expectation of most employers at a job fair. They're just looking at, hey, give me a general idea of who you are, what you've done, and how successful you've been at it. Let's see here. We didn't catch the rest of them.
I see Scott's question about career fair. Yeah, what is expected for attire at the career fair these days? Spot on. Some employers are moving more towards casual. As an attendee, I always say, dress so that you are best, or you're ready to represent yourself best. So for some, if you don't have a full suit and tie, I don't ever want to feel someone has to go and purchase one if that's not within your financial, place right now. But if you have, nice dress pants and a nice top or a sweater, right? I want you to be able to represent yourself best in these situations. And so that's, I would say, kind of the standard at career fairs. If you have more business professional attire, that's great too. But just know that what you'll kind of see in today's career fairs is kind of a wide range of attire, especially from the employer side, just because some offices are very, very casual, right? Jeans, polos, where some are still very, very business professional. So I always say, like, just represent yourself best in that situation.
Yes.
To add on to that, like Scott, if your question coming from like, I don't want to be underdressed because everyone else is wearing suits, like just from last year, I would say most people's like will wear, I was like casual to business casual. Like there's definitely folks wearing like suits, but this is where I think going back to like Miley's like point is like, what do you feel like best representing yourself? Like, and there are certain positions also based on like, what you're interested in, like I feel like based on your profession, you may also have a sense for like a typical, what do people wear to work as well. So that's just like another point to consider.
I did want to add on to the question that was in the chat about, Hennepin County gives the questions 24 hours in advance. I think you did a very good job of talking about that. Our particular, for my agency, we give them an hour in advance, which, it just changes. It just depends. But remember, if you ever do get those questions in advance, that's a great opportunity. One thing I would recommend against is, and I've seen it a few times now, where someone will put the question into AI and get AI's answer. It's actually pretty obvious when that happens. I've had someone actually disagree with their own answer within the course of answering the question. So it has to come from you. AI is a great assistance, and I know a lot of people dabble in it and certainly utilize it. But at the end of the day, we want to hear your story. We want to hear how you've been successful. So prepare all you want, but at the end of the day, it has to tell your story.
This wasn't a question, but I do like to share this tip as well, is that here at the state, our state agencies do recruit and hire independent of one another, which means if you see a role that's open at Deed and you're really interested in that role, but you also see a position open at Department of Human Services and you're really interested in that role and you don't know if you should apply for one or the other, apply for all, apply for both of them. So because we have closed dates, I don't ever want someone to miss an opportunity to apply to a role that really speaks to them because they're nervous that they're going to get, selected or not selected because they apply to multiple positions. You can definitely apply to many and multiple roles at the same time for your own benefit.
Yeah, I was thinking of this as we were talking about it, but yeah, in many cases, people are just wearing their coats, their winter coats. If you got a nice winter coat, it really doesn't matter too much what you wear underneath. I do want to put another plug into the chat for pre-registering. This will be sent out again tomorrow, and we did put it in there before. But could you talk a little bit about the benefits of pre-registering for the fair? I know that there was some additional benefits in doing so.
Would love to. So if you are interested in attending, even if you're a little bit on the fence, still recommend pre-registering because you'll be able to check in a lot faster. We have a self check-in process. So if you're there last year, we had more of a manual check-in at a registration desk. This year we have a QR code. So when you arrive, you can just say, hey, I'm here. And then we'll be able to navigate you to the main event room. In addition, if you do register, we'll be able to send you logistics information before the event. So I'll give you more directions on where to go, where to park, and then just some additional tips and guidance as well for that day of the event. So we'll make it a lot quicker for you and then just ensures that you get to the right place. If we didn't get a confirmation email of our registration, is it possible it didn't go through? If you did the registration form and it says, thank you, you've completed the form, you are good. If you have questions too, you can reach out to me directly. I think my contact was at the beginning. If not, we'll include it here. You can reach out and I can double check your registration for you. But if not, you can register again. It won't ruin our registration process behind the scenes. So totally okay if you're like, ooh, I don't know if it went through. Feel free to register again just to make sure that you're in.
Just quickly react to Kristen's comments about what to wear. I completely agree. And the other thing is taking weather into consideration. If you are parked or taking the public transportation, it's a 3-5 minutes walk from the Green Line, but it's still, I think Saturday is going to be kind of cold. So I would just be safe, be warm, probably would be my personal priority. And also know that you'll be walking around in the, in the fair. So just comfortable shoes.
There was a question, I'm glad someone asked this. They said that they just had one interview. Does that mean anything? If it's a multi-interview process, they'll tell you at the very beginning when we do kind of the introductions at a panel interview, whether that's in person or online, or you can ask. You can ask is how many steps. So don't be concerned if you just interviewed one time and you haven't been called back for that second interview. At least for Deed, who I work for the Department of Employment and Economic Development, our process is until you've heard that you don't have the job, you're still in consideration. It's okay to check back, and many of your panels will tell you that if you have questions, you can contact me. But we do, for people that interview, we reach out to each of them to let them know. And it can take a long time. I'll tell you, having been through this process many times with the state, there's a lot of I's to dot and T's to cross. And when it goes through all sorts of different things, it takes longer than anybody wants. So if you're ever at have a question about where you are in the process, you can reach out. In most cases, they're just going to say this is still in process, and we'll let you know. But don't give up on a position until you've been told that it has been filled. All right, I think we've hit all the questions in the chat. So I just wanted to thank everyone for taking the time to invest, really, in preparing for what could be the next step in your career. You've taken this step. Now take the next step, brave the cold, and go down to the armory and bring a few copies of your resume and introduce yourself. Make yourself a little uncomfortable. Dare to be a little brave on there. I'll turn it over to my co-presenters to wrap it up today. And just one last plug, reach out to your local career force location before or after the job fair to take that next step, to get your resume reviewed, to do some interview prep, maybe even to help you with some job search or some skills identification. We do this every single day of the year, so we'd be happy to help you as well.
Thanks, Art. We look forward to seeing you all there on Saturday if you can make it. But just know that all of our state agencies do go to career fairs throughout Greater Minnesota as well. So if you see one of our agencies at an event, stop by, say hi, inquire. But we really do look forward to meeting you. If you see me and Xiaoji on Saturday, please introduce yourself. Let us know that you were at the webinar. Would love to meet you. Anything from you, Xiaoji?
I am good. Yeah. If you see us on Saturday, just stop by and say hi. And, you can always ask us if you have any questions on the day too. We'll be there to help.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day and good luck in your job search.
Thank you, everyone.